in listen-only mode.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the webinar. We're going to begin in just a moment. Before we do get started, at the beginning of each of these, for the benefit of anybody new to this format, we do like to briefly just review the webinar procedures and how interaction will work. Upon joining, you probably heard on the recording that the audio is one way only from us to you. You can still send us questions and comments, and we encourage you to do so. Please use the question/chat box that you'll find located at the bottom of the toolbar, likely residing on the right side of your screen. And for a quick audio test and to bring your attention to that box, I just ask that if you can hear me, it sounds good, it's a clear signal, or relatively clear. I am using my laptop built-in mic, but just type a Y or yes or anything to that effect to let us know that indeed you can hear us and it sounds all right. And we'll wait for those confirmations to come in. I will mention that the volume is controlled on your end, so at any point if it doesn't seem to be coming through loud enough, just go ahead and crank it on up on your computer, external speakers, or telephone if you've connected that way. You should also have the first page of the PowerPoint presentation that's being used today viewable on your screen. If you don't see that, experience audio problems or any other technical problems, again, use the same questions box that you'll send questions and comments in to let us know of any technical issues. And we'll pause to take care of them if anything arises, but it looks like we're good to go. I appreciate the feedbacks and the audio confirmation. My part's done. Rhett's going to be on in just a second, and we'll begin.
Thank you, Tony. Welcome, everybody. This is the January Dropout Prevention webinar series. This series was created in response to our Dropout Prevention survey, our annual survey of statewide across all districts, and their desire to learn more about what they can be doing to reduce dropouts and increase graduation and student achievement. So these little one-hour webinars hopefully help explain some of the language that we're talking about, as well as practical in the field examples of some of these efforts in use. I want to frame it with the OSPI vision and mission. We adopted this last year. Randy talked about it's our goal, not just graduation. It's great to think about graduation as a great indicator that those students are ready to move on to the next work, but our real mission, is that beyond, having them ready for that beyond work, whether it's career, college, or life. And how do we do that? I'm constantly thinking about what's my role in that, and that's, to provide funding, resources, tools, data, and technical assistance that enable you guys, the educators, to better serve your students. So with that in mind, this little effort here, we're going to focus on some of I'm going to talk a little bit about our key performance indicators, which there's 14 that OSPI has adopted. These are our data measures that we track out in the field and respond to. This lets us know if we're helping you guys move the needle on student achievement. And in particular, my little focus of dropout prevention, we focus on grad rates, of course, ninth grade course failure, which is a huge indicator that students are likely to drop out, discipline, and attendance and chronic absenteeism, which is an indicator from kindergarten on that students are going to be successful. With that in mind, our framework that we look at about how we can better support that is through the multi-tiered system of support, looking at how most of our efforts should be and can be focused on the all, and how can we support that so that we reduce those that need more strategic interventions and those that need the intense interventions later on that we know are more costly, more time consuming, and have less likelihood of success. So with that in mind, we're going to move on to Dixie Grunenfelder, the Director of Secondary Education here, and she's going to talk about student perception surveys. So Dixie?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Nice job in framing and teeing up the issue of student perception surveying. I first want to say there might be some of you out there that have more experience and probably are more knowledgeable about student perception surveying, and I appreciate that. And as we go through, as always, if there's tools or resources that you're using in your district around student surveying, we'd love to learn more from you. So my contact information is at the end. Please feel free to share whatever you know. from your district. And from those of you who are new to student perception surveying, hopefully we'll create a foundation for you, and really probably, and you'll end up with more questions at the end of this than when you started, but hopefully it will guide your conversation and your work. Just to frame what the importance of student perception surveying, as Rhett mentioned, we have this overarching framework around dropout prevention, intervention, and re-engagement, and a key piece of that is student engagement. And one thing that helps with student engagement is actually asking them what they think and having that information guide the work that we do. So with that being said, what I'd like to cover today in the webinar is what is student perception surveying. So what's the definition, which is pretty basic. Why is it important to survey students? How to gather student perception data. Beyond the analysis of the data, what do we do with the information? Best practices around student perception surveying. And I'm going to use the Healthy Youth Survey and talk a little bit about some analysis we've done with that. Many of you, hopefully, are participants in the Healthy Youth Survey or have familiarity with that, but I'm going to highlight that in a little bit more detail later in the webinar. And so just to get started so that we're all thinking along the same lines about what we mean by student perception surveying, pretty basic definition. It's just collection of direct feedback from students. And there's various ways to do that, at different levels to do that, at different time intervals to do that. So that's what we're going to flesh out throughout the webinar. But we're really just talking about collecting information directly from students about what's going on within the school, or as far as the Healthy Youth Survey goes, even outside of school. So there's several uses for student perception data. Really the bottom line is getting the voice of the customer with the goal of increasing the ability to meet their needs. So you can collect data to change things that are going on in the classroom. You can collect information that helps affect school climate, affect the training that's going on within the school for staff, and even professional development or student presentations or information that can be brought into the school for students. It helps provide feedback to staff on what's going on, and it can help identify best practices around connecting students and increasing their success in school. So really a lot of different uses for student perception data, but again, the bottom line is just to get their voice included in the conversation in doing the work. Let me tell you a little bit about what research says about student perception surveying. I went back a little bit and looking at some resources, but pretty common sense. Students are direct consumers of teacher services, and so it's important to get their feedback on what's working in the classroom and maybe what's not, and what would help them learn more and improve their learning. There's multiple measures. Actually, what the research said was the more the different modes that we use and the more measures we collect and the more information we collect improves school effectiveness. And that does have a little bit of a caveat, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get later in the webinar. But basically just saying the more the different modes you can get, the various perspectives you can get on an issue will improve the outcomes and improve solutions. And the research by Baker said that student feedback can help school administrators and teachers improve their practices. So all pretty basic and kind of like, yeah, we figured that. But research has substantiated that a collection of student data and the use of that data can actually improve the work that we're doing. There's different levels of data collection around student perception data. Often, because of where I have come from in my history, I think of Healthy Youth Survey, which is kind of that broad school level view of student data collection. But there is that classroom-based data collection, and you know that's quick, it's frequent, it gives you feedback immediately on what's going on in the classroom and if it's working, and getting the outcomes that you're looking for, and ways to adapt what you're doing. So right in the classroom, immediate feedback. Then there's also the school and district program kind of student perception surveying, which when we think about that, that's like the surveying that might be done through Second Step or other character education programs. Or there's a survey that I'm going to talk about very briefly or mention, the Delaware School Climate Survey. There's several surveys out there that really take a look at school-wide kind of issues. And the Healthy Youth Survey can be seen in that slide as well, although it can also be in the next category. And that data that's collected is more strategic and really taking a look at are the programs that are being implemented getting the results that you were hoping for in moving students' behaviors or attitudes or beliefs around a specific issue. And then lastly, there's those statewide or national surveys. Again, Healthy Youth Survey fits into this as well. And that provides us an opportunity to collect certain points of information that can be compared to others in the state or even at a national level. Many of the questions on the Healthy Youth Survey are straight from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is a national survey. So we can see what our students look like in Washington State in comparison to other states. And this helps when we make major policy changes, such as legalizing marijuana, to take a look at the attitude changes of the youth in Washington compared to other states, or even the use of marijuana compared to other states. So if other states are considering, major policy changes, they can look at our state data in comparison to their own just to see what that looks like. Those state data sets are critical in addition to just informing how policy is impacting, to also, where we can apply for money, where we can fill out grants. Often it's the data set that we use for those kind of state level funding opportunities. So beyond what the research says and the different levels and the data collection, and I'm going to give some specific examples in a little bit, I wanted to talk a little bit about analyzing the data. So often what we find is we spend time developing surveys and collecting data, and then it kind of stops. So I guess pitfall number one that we'll address is taking that step to analyze the data that's collected. And I think what I would say is there's not a wrong way to do this. Many times we're not really sure what we are looking for when we start, and we're going to give some examples today of some questions that other districts have used, and the Healthy Youth Survey obviously provides many elements that are important, but the analysis part is just as critical, if not more critical, than the collection of the data itself. So things you might want to consider when you're looking at the data is just looking at what do you notice high level in comparison to if you have other districts or other sources to look at. What do you notice in comparison to other districts or other grades or other schools, and just taking that overarching kind of view. And what can we learn from the data? Does anything jump out and surprise you, or did it affirm what we thought? And I don't think it's always, student perception data is an opportunity to take a look at things that we can improve, but it's also an opportunity to celebrate and to show where we're doing things that are well. If students say that they've got someone to turn to if they have a problem, and the school's at 86%, that's pretty darn good. It's not that we need to turn our back on the 14% of students that say they don't have someone to turn to, but that's a good deal. And so to stop and think, what are we doing to get that 86%? And make sure that you hold on to that, I think, is important. So always be proud of the positive work that's going on. And I know in the Healthy Youth Survey, we do a lot of like social norming. So at the same time we say, 25% of kids are using alcohol, 75% are not. And so there's different ways to look at that data. So think about the messaging. And and maybe some of the root cause analysis behind it too. That's a little bit deeper dive into the analysis of the data, but why do you think students feel that way? And that's where, and I'll talk about that in a minute, the data is really just the start of the conversation. So there's many different ways to analyze that data, and I know that there are data coaching protocols, and I know the ESDs are building expertise around how to help look at data, and having student perception data just be one more data source to include in that data carousel as you're doing your analysis would be advantageous. So I mentioned that the actual analysis of the data is pitfall number 1. Pitfall number 2 is, so we've collected the data and we've analyzed the data, so what are we going to do about that? And actually going from analysis to action often is another peak that we need to climb. And so data can become so overwhelming that there's so many different actions and different things that you can act upon. And I think you need to think about what actions you want to take in prioritizing what the data is telling you and what's going to be important. Not that all the information is not important, but again, thinking about the health use survey where you've got over 200 data points that you could take a look at, you obviously can't put action items and action plans around every single thing collected. So prioritizing. I think having a structured conversation around the data, and if you're going to collect student perception data, committing to having those conversations around the data with multiple audiences. So you've asked for my opinion now. There's some validation too, and this is the analysis, and this is what we're going to do about it, and having conversations with people to know it's being used. Especially with students, I think it's important that if students are going to take time out of their day and open up and share information, I think it's important that we loop back around and talk with them and share with them, not necessarily the details of the results, although we do have examples from districts where the students take lead and in analyzing the health use survey data and sharing that data and figuring out collectively as a student body what they want to do about some of the issues that arise from the health use survey. And we've got examples of how students have taken health use survey data and gone to school boards and created action plans within the building around certain things and run social media campaigns and done some of those things. But I think it's important to include them in the conversation once the data is collected and some high-level analysis is done in this action planning and work that happens. I think best practice around student perception surveying would say that student perception surveying does create buy-in in the work that we're doing. But from this perspective, I think it's important to create buy-in to participate. And I know that that comes from the students themselves and understanding the why behind why we're surveying, why we need to know this information, why it's important, and just a general idea of what we're going to do with it. I think that kind of buy-in is important for classroom teachers or administrators to have as well. If we don't get the buy-in, I think the data becomes compromised. I don't think we get good quality data. I don't think the importance is paid in some of the details in collecting. I have a background in the healthy use survey, but I know that in a school building, if you don't have buy-in from teachers in understanding the importance of the data, not just to the building and how we're using the data, but also at a community level and at a state level, what we have is teachers saying, yeah, this is some survey, you can fill it out if you want, you know, it's whatever, fill in the dots, I don't really care, pass the survey out. As opposed to, this is a really important survey, we really want to hear from you, this information is going to be used in several ways, we want to hear your voice, you can really see how you can make or break the data and really set the tone for the data that's being collected. So creating that buy-in and the importance of why we're collecting it, I think, is important. Try it out is a second point. I think there are so many different things, tools that you can use and questions that you can ask, and hopefully we'll provide some guidance on some key things that you might take a look at when you're doing it. But I guess the bottom line is you don't know what's going to work for you and your district and your building until you try it out. And I think we, again, have some examples that we can share, but I don't think there's one tool, I guess, bottom line. So we've got some different things that we can combine and different levels of surveying that we can do. Work through the challenges. I think it's a misnomer to think that you're going to step into student perception surveying and get it right the first time. And I don't want us to be discouraged and say, yeah, we tried surveying students and it didn't work, and not do it. Let's try again, and let's learn from mistakes and try something different, or maybe pilot something, go a little bit smaller scale. Don't go district-wide. Let's target, or maybe we've already done those grade levels in high school, so let's take a look at surveying in elementary or middle school. So just trying to work through the challenges and learn from mistakes and move on. I do think that we all, and OSPI is really working on this, is developing capacity to analyze the data. We collect lots and lots of data, and again, that getting through that pitfall of collecting data and then not taking the time to analyze it. And that happens in many places, and even in areas within my own life where I'll collect information and then, yeah, I forgot to go back and take a look at that. And that really undermines the credibility of why are you asking me if you're not going to use the data. So make sure you develop the capacity to analyze it, and certainly share what was collected. Again, the credibility, the honoring that you took the time to give us your input, and we sure appreciate that, and this is what we learned, and this is what we did with it. So just that messaging around how the data is being used, I think, is critical. So now I want to shift gears a little bit and share some examples. And as I said at the beginning of the webinar, I don't want you to think that this is a finite list of things. There are things happening out in districts around student perception surveying that are top-notch, and if you have something you want to share, like I said, please send it to us, and we'll include it in our examples moving forward. But in preparation for this webinar, we would usually have a district present some of their information, and unfortunately we weren't able to secure a guest presenter, but I was given information from several districts, and I'm going to just go through some of the information that they shared with me, some of the questions they asked. We have a couple districts that we've been working closely with, Kelso School District, Sunnyside School District, Spokane School District, and Franklin Pierce School District on our Graduation Success Initiative. And so they're always a captive audience when we have something like this come up to say, what are you all doing around student perception surveying? And I did hear back, thanks to Rhett asking the question, I did hear back from all 4 of those districts, and they shared with us. Now keep in mind, these are districts that have increased their graduation rate and decreased the disproportionality in low-income student graduation rate over time. So they've seen successes in graduation, and so we always like to turn to them and see what they're doing. Again, there's other folks that are doing great perception surveying, and I would love to hear more from them as well. I'll start with the very basic sharing from Sunnyside School District, who asks one very simple question. Do you have an adult you feel you can trust in this building? And they keep it very simple. They do surveying through the Center for Education Effectiveness, CEE. They use lots of those things. But when they took a look at what is one of the key questions or things that they like to track to really just be that litmus test on kids' perception of trust in the building and someone they can turn to, they keep it very simple with that one question.
And I think, This is Brad again. Talking with Dave Martinez, their assistant principal, he talked about that question, and that was one of those surprise responses where, they felt like they were doing a great job connecting with students. They felt, they had a strong feeling that those students had an adult they could trust. And so when they got those results, it was a surprise when it was the opposite, where there wasn't a lot of trust in the school. So that actually changed a lot of their practices and beliefs there in the school to try to make more intentional efforts to connect students with adults. It created their, they turned one of their class periods into an advisory period so that every kid had an advisor that they had to meet with on a daily basis, and they had some other supports that came in as well from the results of just that one survey, and they've seen a lot of results turning that around, and so now students are engaged. Students do feel that they have an adult they can trust, and they have a connection there with the school, and that they attribute a lot of their success to that particular effort in particular.
Great, thanks, Rhett. Another example that Rhett was able to glean from Spokane schools, they participate in the Healthy Youth Survey, but the limitation is that it's only every other year, and it's limited to grades 6, 8, 10, and 12. So they've expanded their student perception surveying to grades 3 through 12, and they do some additional surveying in secondary education buildings. But they have a set of 8 questions, and I'm going to read through them very quickly, that they ask of all students grades 3 through 12. Things like, I feel safe and comfortable with my teachers at school. Adults in this school treat me with kindness and respect. My school helps me feel good about who I am. My teacher is willing to give me help on schoolwork if I need it. My teacher notices if I have trouble learning something. I enjoy being at school. I feel safe at school. And lastly, some students at this school are picked on because of their race or culture. So for Spokane, these 8 questions are the measure, again, across grades 3 through 12 that they survey annually to get a feel for what's going on. And probably those of you who participate in the Healthy Youth Survey, you can see some of them are Healthy Youth Survey questions. So they're collecting similar items, but on a more regular basis from a broader audience. But they can still then compare it to state sample, national data, some of those other data measures. So cross-pollinating those surveys, and I see that quite a bit where because the Healthy Youth Survey is only every other year, a district will pull out a subset of Healthy Youth Survey questions and ask them every year of every student in the building, something like that, so that they kind of have that interim measure to generate data and guide practice and discussion. So I think that's pretty impressive, and I think when we look at school climate to then collect from these various perspectives around how kids feel about the supports they get and just the general climate of feeling safe and liking to be there and engaged in the learning is an important part of what Spokane does and the data that they collect. I'm going to share one more example from one of our outlier districts, and that's from Kelso. They collect across a Likert scale of 1 through 5 around some specific, they're more classroom-based things about I'm engaged with class curriculum. I'm able to receive additional teacher time in order to understand difficult or challenging concepts. I'm more positive in my academic outlook as related to school success. And then they have some open-ended questions where they asked if their pack time or clan time has been helpful, and what do they see as the greatest strength around a change in scheduling. So really just getting their feedback on some changes that happened within their building. So they will ask standardized questions and then have some additional kind of specific questions, open-ended often, that they'll collect that are more responsive to current changes. The other thing that the principal, John Gummel, shared with me was they do a follow-up, and it's not so much a student perception survey, but he has a principal blog, and he will throw out a question to students and ask for input. The most recent one was, please share with me classroom strategies that help you learn the best. And students were able to provide input. So he's got the survey set up, collecting information, but then he also has a more kind of quick turnaround responses that he can collect through his principal blog, which is just getting off the ground. He's excited to see if it evolves and he can get extensive participation in the blog. But already in just that one question around what classroom strategies are helpful, he's been able to collect information that has helped guide their professional learning community and their discussions within their building to help students.
I think with Kelso's example too, their strategy to give students options, with surveys similar to their general student perception survey, by giving them ones where they can see impacts right away. It's going to get more interest, more buy-in from the students on those more general, longer-term questions, more amalgamous questions that might not, they won't see the turnaround, so they might not be as invested. But having those shorter-term, really responsive questions will help, hopefully, get more students to participate and participate more intentionally.
That's great. I know that when we were talking with Franklin Pierce School District yesterday on another topic, we talked a little bit about some of their perception surveying, and I think what was unique about Franklin Pierce was some of the perception surveying and the questions that are carried from the students to the parents to the staff. We talked about asking students, is this a school that you would recommend to a friend? And asking staff, is this a school that you would recommend to a colleague to work at, or would you send your own student to this school? And asking the same of district administrators. So kind of taking that student perception lens beyond the student, but to the different audiences, still looking at, would you send a student here, or would you recommend the district and the building in which they work to a colleague to work in? So kind of getting that broader perspective on surveying from Franklin Pierce. The one thing we heard from these districts were, you can collect, again, hundreds and thousands of data points, but if it gets if you get too much data, you become paralyzed and it's hard to act. So their experience in this was to keep it simple, try to zero in on 5 to 10 questions that are really going to help guide. Staff can help select those questions, student leadership can help select those questions and try it out. But I think it's easier to collect, it's easier to analyze, and it's easier to create action plans if you limit the scope a little bit and not get inundated with data. So that was one of the things that they shared with us. I just wanted to share some other examples because we've got into some specifics around some of the districts and the work they're doing. I did want to share that Washington State received a federal grant, the Project Aware grant, that focuses on substance abuse and mental health, mainly mental health, and we target 3 districts, and they're doing, the 3 districts, Battleground School District, Shelton School District, and Marysville School District, have done some really extensive school climate surveying using the Delaware School Climate Survey. And that data has just been collected for the first time, and so we haven't really had an opportunity to analyze it. But it includes student perception data, parent perception data, staff data collection across many different, lots of data across many different elements. And we're going to be tracking that and sharing what they've been able to learn and what they found most useful about that kind of comprehensive surveying across those multiple audiences using similar data points, specifically looking at school climate. So that effort's fairly new, and probably we'll need to hold off on sharing more about that until we have a couple more administrations under our belt. Many of you are probably familiar with the Center for Education Effectiveness. Many districts use their school student perception data collection tools and their parent perception data tools to do that data collection. I know that Tacoma Public Schools has been working with them to develop perception survey that they will use across their district, and they've zeroed in on, I think, 20 or so questions, and kind of just in the process of developing that. But I know there's great resources and tools out there through that organization. And then lastly, the Healthy Youth Survey data, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about now.
Can I correct?
Yes.
I just wanted to point out Mike Hickman. Thanks, Mike. Wanted to mention the 9 characteristics of effective schools survey, which OSPI has, and that particular survey, they've got a student survey, they've got a parent version, they've got a teacher and staff version, so that would get that comprehensive look from different audiences and something that's already out there. He also mentions the Student Hope survey through the Gallup poll, and I'm not familiar with that survey, so that might be something to look at too.
And we'll definitely add those examples to our slide before we post this. So thanks, Mike. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Healthy Youth Survey now. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Healthy Youth Survey, bear with me. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that for a little while, and we've done a really cool analysis around the Healthy Youth Survey. So this is going to be a little bit of a plug for why you should participate in the Healthy Youth Survey and some of the great information we get out of it and some of the resources that we provide. So the Healthy Youth Survey is a collaborative effort that is organized by the Department of Social and Health Services, OSPI, Department of Health, the Liquor and Cannabis Board, and I think the Department of Commerce. So some large state agencies got together and said, let's be collaborative and create one survey so that we're not all going out to schools and trying to deliver our own survey. So it's a survey every other year in the even number. So we're going to have a survey again in 2016. And we survey 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. And it is a survey that's based off other national surveys like the Youth Risk Behavior Survey or the Monitoring the Future Survey. So many of the questions are data points that are collected across the country in many different communities and schools. In our state last year, we had over 200,000 students participate, over 1,000 schools, really strong participation. From the state level, we draw a state representative sample that we use for our analysis, but then we offer that other districts that want to participate, buildings that want to participate, it's offered free of charge that you can administer the survey, and we collect those results, compile those, and put them on the askhys.net website so that you have access to data to use at the local level. Certainly this information is important not just to schools but to communities as well, because many of the data points that are collected are about things that are happening in schools but also families and communities and things outside the schoolhouse, and people find the information very useful. So I don't know if you visited askhys.net, but it's the website where the information is housed and the analytic tools are housed and all the data reports are there. And so up through the 2014 data survey, all the information is collected there. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about some of the analysis that you can do on askhys.net. In addition to the fact sheets that are already pre-populated on 20 different topic areas, such as school safety, there's a survey, a fact sheet on, health and fitness. There's a fact sheet on, just a whole cadre. There's just many different topics there that we continue to develop those fact sheets. Those are pretty much standard in their delivery, but they're nice because they're all prepackaged and the data gets loaded in, and you just select what grade you want and what year you want, and the information is collected. But one of the powerful tools on the AskHYS.net website is the query tool. And so you're able to just get prevalence data. And I want to share this because I know many schools, as I said, over 1,000 are participating in the Health Use Survey, and I don't know that they go back and take a look at what the data said and do some analysis. So from the very basic analysis on the AskHYS.website, you can just get prevalence data. So we have the pre-printed reports that gives all the data, but you can also just go in and one element, one question at a time, you can just run the results for a specific grade or a specific year. So this is an example of, in 2014, 10th graders across the state, we asked the question, have you had contact with your counselor in the last year? And 45% said no, they had not. And 55% of 10th graders said yes, they had had contact with their school counselor. It includes the confidence interval. So depending on the number of students responding and the variation within those, they're able to put that confidence interval. So somewhere between 42 and 48% of students actually answered no. It kind of gives you, if you were going to broaden it, what the actual result would be. And then the actual N number. So 1,805 students said no to that question. Keep in mind this is based on our state sample. So you're able to just run basic, tell me what the answer or the data said around a specific data item.
Is that just at the state level?
You can run this data at the building level, at the district level, at the county level, at the ESD level, at the state level. The building and district level is password protected, so only staff within that district have access. If the superintendent grants access, then you can see community groups have access to that data, but it's protected. And if you're interested in getting access to that data, talk to your superintendent and let us know, and we can get you a password to get in and see that data. So beyond just those simple points in time, and keep in mind the Health Use Survey collects about 200 different data points. So you can also cross-tab two items together, and I just randomly chose a couple. So one of the questions on the survey talks about, I have opportunities to talk one-on-one with my teachers, and then I cross-tab that with, what grades did you receive last year? Mostly A's and B's, or mostly C's, D's, and F's. And so you can start to take a look at differences between students who are getting A's and B's, answering the question that I had an opportunity to talk with my teachers, versus those that are getting C's, D's, and F's. So start to make some correlation, or, and again, just starting conversations around, well, I wonder why that is. I wonder, what's going on there, and let's do some root cause analysis around what that might be. And you can do this between any two data items on the survey. So I could have chosen anything, like, are you getting your recommended 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day to kids who say they see the dentist on an annual basis for a preventative visit? Any two items you can cross-tab to start looking for correlations. I would suggest before you go in and start using cross-tabs, you have an idea of the questions you want to answer or ask, because you can get, I get in there and start asking, what about this, what about that, and oh, that's interesting, and I get myself down some rabbit holes. So you might want to have kind of a predetermined list and then see where your creativity takes you. But the combinations, as you can see, are endless in the analysis of data when you get into this, this kind of cross-tabbing.
I just wanted to include, particularly with the Health Use Survey, GATE, graduation and team effort, we came up with some milestone measures of how can we measure our effectiveness across all the GATE partners that we're seeing success with students and getting to that goal of post-secondary success. These are the four buckets that we sort of put everything into. I'll point at bucket number 3, student well-being. That bucket, the data that we get to measure our progress on that all comes from the Healthy Youth Survey, and it's an assortment of risk and supportive factors for students, for their self, their family, their school, and their community, to see how well those students are feeling that they're safe and they have their needs met.
Okay. So I'm going to continue talking a little bit about the Healthy Youth Survey and some of the analysis that we've done. In partnership with that collective group of state agencies, we commissioned a specific study last year to take a look at responses on the Healthy Youth Survey and graduation rates at the district level. And it was pretty neat. We, through Looking Glass Analytics, we had them take a look at 70 different indicators or questions off the Healthy Youth Survey, overlay those with district level graduation rates to take a look at where were the strongest correlations in those elements that impacted graduation. So I just wanted to share that. The actual report is available. I noticed on askhys.net it's not posted yet, but I'll make sure it gets posted there. It's pretty interesting, pretty basic. I'm going to cover the highlights here, but we will get that posted soon. So in taking a look at the 2013-14 graduation rates, they found that 37 Healthy Youth Survey items were significantly associated with that. So that being said, when districts reported graduation rates, let's say, and then had a response on the Healthy Youth Survey, there was some correlation there. And I just listed out a couple here that had very strong correlation rates. And some of them might not surprise you, but some of them might. And maybe this might provide some guidance on if you were going to do interim kind of Healthy Youth surveying off, you know, in the odd numbered years with more than just 10th and 12th graders or something like that. This might be a place you could start to kind of narrow down the items that you would choose. So what we found was that bullying wasn't correlated directly with graduation rates, but students reporting they knew how to report bullying within their districts was correlated with higher graduation rates. So districts, students said, I know how to report bullying, had higher graduation rates. This isn't surprising. Districts who had higher rates of I feel safe at school had higher graduation rates. The question that there's someone in my building that I can talk to if I have an alcohol or drug problem, kids who said they had that resource available, the schools had higher graduation rates. Many of the social emotional factors, we added that battery of questions in 2014. So if students reported they knew how to disagree without fighting, they try to understand other people's perspectives, they think about the consequences of their actions before actually doing them. So those social emotional factors, higher rates of those had higher graduation rates. Like being at school, if it was a pleasant environment and students like to be at school, higher graduation rates. Chances to talk with teachers one-on-one, get involved in activities within the school, both within the school and after school, so some of that engagement, some of those engagement elements, being part of classroom discussion and deciding on classroom activities, higher rates of those led to higher graduation rates. Those are all questions that are in the school protective factor part of the survey. So if you've ever drilled down into the school protective factor elements or questions within the survey, there's a whole set of those that are directly correlated with graduation rates. So I would think that would be a great place to start and take a look at what your data says around what students are saying about those elements, and then were there areas where you can be celebrating and areas where you might want to take some additional action. This is under, again, the protective factor, but recognition of protective factor, the last bullet there. Teachers noticed when students were doing a good job. Schools tell parents when students are doing a good job. Teachers praise them for their hard work. All correlated with graduation rates. So I think sometimes what I hear is the Healthy Youth Survey is only done every other year. It's such a small sample. But what I can see is even that is helpful in the conversation. I think it's at the start of the conversation, but the data collected on the Healthy Youth Survey and it's linking to graduation rates, I think is a pretty powerful statement. Maybe things we thought we knew, but this kind of definitely ties that correlation together in a little more definitive way. And again, that analysis has been completed. The report will be posted soon. I think it's, for those of you who participated in the Healthy Youth Survey, thank you for doing that because your data allowed us to do this analysis. Things to look for coming up. I wanted to, I'll talk about registration and you can talk about the district survey, Rhett. Registration for the Healthy Youth Survey is going to open up for 2016. Coming up here in the next month, the memo will go out to superintendents to say it's time to sign up again. We certainly hope that schools will participate in that survey. If you're part of that state sample, we really need you to participate. And if you're a piggyback school that is just registering to collect this information, it's so valuable to not just the success of the school, but for the community around you and the grants that they collect and the work they're trying to do with young people in your communities, that we hope that you'll continue to participate. And if you haven't participated in the past, try it out. See if you can start with a building or two and see if you don't want to go district-wide. I think it's a great opportunity to start taking a look at some of the student perception survey data, and what's nice about that is on askhys.net, the analytic tool is already built for you, and many of the kind of tools to analyze the data and present it and communicate it are done for you. So please consider registering for this survey when you see that information coming out in February, and registration will be open through June.
A little bit about the district survey. We've run 2 years so far of an annual survey of school districts, asking a lot about some of their system components for reducing dropout, including early warning systems, multi-tiered systems of support, goals and leadership around that, and what are some of the challenges and the feedback sort of loops, some of which is what made us decide to start this webinar series. We have 2 reports online from 2014, and 2015. We are about to launch our 3rd one towards the end of this month. If you're in a district, make sure that your superintendent or whoever knows about that they're going to receive it and they should be filling it out. And this year we did tack on a question about student perception surveys and if there's particular questions that your district uses to help influence practice there. So excited about that, excited about hearing more about how districts are using student perception surveys and if there's anything that we can help support or standardize or anything from our end to support those efforts. I'll make sure on my PDF for this I put the link for the where to find the survey at. It's at k12.wa.gate/results.aspx. I'll have it typed out for our PDF. If for some reason you can't just write that out really fast.
There's lots of other things to look forward to, but specifically to the student perception survey, those are 2 specific things that we have coming up in the short term. Always looking at student engagement as a critical piece of the work when we think about dropout prevention, intervention, and re-engagement, and trying to engage youth in that conversation. and the collection and the analysis and the action planning using that student voice, I think, is so critical to the work that we do. So looking forward to continue to build our toolbox around student perception surveying. So last shameless plug, if you've got anything you want to share with us, we would be happy to collect that and share it with other districts. One thing we hear consistently is, what are other people doing around that? And so any opportunity we have to have those examples and things to share, and even lessons learned. If there's things that you tried that didn't work, if you think it would help somebody else, we'd love to hear that as well. So I put my contact information at the end. I think Rhett, you have his contact information as well. Feel free to send along any comments, suggestions, not just around student perception surveying, but anything else you're working on. If you have a potential topic for a future webinar, let us know. And thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, we have one question from the field, is from Jodelle Alinger. Is the annual post-high school survey and outcomes from the Center for Change in Transition Services reviewed by GATE for analysis or discussion concerning additional data of outcomes for students with disabilities in Washington?
No, but we sure will. Thank you for the tip. I'd like to learn more about that survey specifically. I haven't looked at that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, one last plug too about this. Student perception is such an interesting topic. When we're looking at how we can measure our effectiveness, we included those student perception surveys because, and we included that in our district survey, is the fact that if students don't recognize what you're doing, what supports are there, what they have available to them, if they might as well not be offering those supports. So learning from the students, hearing their voice is going to, it can't do anything but help. Anything else?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thanks, and hopefully you'll join us for next month. I don't think I have a topic listed yet for that, so I will be posting that very soon. And we will have a recording of this webinar and the PDF online later this week. Have a good day.